Hi, Gant. How are you?
Hey, fantastic.
I'm so excited to talk to you because I feel like you're my antimatter. I'm a data scientist who's trying to do backend and software engineering, and you're a software engineer who got in AI, and
Yeah,
that's.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
can you?
It's a wild world where all these things are slowly like coming together finally. And so, I've seen plenty of conversations exactly like this, where you've got somebody who's got like a PhD in all the coolest things of machine learning and data, and then they're having conversations with somebody who's like been in web and then like didn't even graduate college or something. And so it's like I've never seen such a disparate group getting along and having so much fun.
Yeah, agreed. I'm actually doing a master's. I'm an industrial engineer, by the way, doing master's in data
Yeah.
science. I took a class of data science and I loved it. And today
Yeah.
I really want to talk about how you got into it as a software engineer.
Yeah. I see.
So can you,
I'm so old though, like that there was no there was no data science when I was in school.
yeah, you got like A star search and other old stuff, I
Yeah.
guess.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I graduated. So I graduated university in 2004. Yeah, there was no data science. We were barely getting computers to talk to one another properly.
Oh, that's something I can't imagine as a relatively younger person. So can you introduce yourself a bit, like
Yes.
what you are doing?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Gant Laborde, CIO of Infinite Red. I've been in software development for a really long time. Started with QBasic back in high school, and just teaching myself using the help menu on my Windows 95 machine. Actually, before that, Windows 3.1. So I'm old. I know this.
I'm old.
But, really got into all this fun stuff. I knew immediately as soon as a computer said hello world, actually it said hello Gant. That I was like, all right, I'm getting into computers. This is where I'm going to be. And sort of continued to push my way into that world. Been working in it for 20 years. And I am CIO of a fantastic agency where we do a lot of React Native work, React Native, tons of mobile app design. But, we do a lot of startup projects and joining teams and building all kinds of other stuff. So websites and other things. So now as AI has finally creeped over from just like the Minimax algorithm, just coming into something that's actually being applied consistently everywhere. We are definitely having a lot of fun working with data and AI a bit more as we see more and more products come in the door asking for it.
How did you get into AI as a software developer slash engineer?
I'll be honest, I hated it for a long time. you know, um, when I created a game back in 2006, where I went to an arcade. There was this fantastic game I loved to play, and one of the things I loved about it is it was really fun, but it was 25 cents every time I played it. So I came back, rewrote the game at home, and then it was time to go ahead and add the AI. Instead of adding the AI, I wrote a server where players could find other players and play over the network. It was way more fun and efficient and better for me than actually writing like Minimax or any other kind of algorithm, because AI at the time was extremely dry, and machine learning was not anything that was something you could really find in any kind of education on. So for a long time, I did not like anything to do with AI, and then I'd have to say that it's just slowly crept in around us, and I started to see it. And believe it or not, there was a episode of Silicon Valley where they did the hot dog not hot dog app in Silicon Valley, and what happens is that was a real app. and it was written in JavaScript. And I said to myself, no, that's not real. So when that came out, it was something like 2017, the episode aired or something like that. I opened up the source code to it, realized there's a whole new world inside of that, and said, okay, this is what I'm going to understand now. I am going to learn this like crazy. And from there, taking courses after courses after courses, reading book after book after book, I started learning it, and then we started working on it with clients. And so that's what got me into it, is specifically seeing the impossible become possible right in front of my eyes. I was like, I'm in. I want to learn that magic right there. That's the magic I want to learn.
that was me when I was writing R. Actually, I learned with R, and I was like, oh, there is an option like that. I mean, I can actually work in this.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way, I'm not going to do anything else, and I'm going to get a job in this. And then I did.
Yeah.
It was nice.
And that's a snap. That's a determination that makes something happen. You say, like, that's it. Going to do this, and then it just happens.
I feel like when you make something priority, like there is nothing that would stop you, to be honest.
Yeah, the danger I think that happens to most people is that they have too many priorities. They have a lot of important things. And anybody who has a lot of important things doesn't have an important thing. And that's the trick. It's the other side, because I dare say, like, outside of software, there are people who have trouble finding one important thing. People who are actually excited about software have too many important things. And it's hard because you think of it as this dichotomy. Either things are important or they're not. The truth is, that's a trap. And the trick is, you have to find what's the thing you're saying, like, I'm going to go do that. And maybe two other things, and that's it. You got to cut it off. Everything else is on the definitely not important list.
I mean, yeah, that's currently my problem. I mean,
it's everybody's problem.
To be honest, I'm like working as an ML engineer, and plus having my master's, plus trying to have a podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we are. I mean, that's a Google developer expert thing. I guess we try to do multiple community stuff, and then end up with not doing anything best, but like trying to handle the situation the best, and like jack of all trades, master of none.
It's so easy to have that happen, and the fun thing that happens there is that I found that, like, there's always it's not like a smooth, like, you're perfect at all those trades and then they're all at the same level. There's some place in those trades where you're making sure the curve it is going up, and I think that, like, you're like, oh, I'm doing well there. Actually, that's the place to push. Like, I'll say that, I love this podcast. I love the video of this, and I love the communication and the community that's happening here. If that comes naturally to you, it's so hard to find people who this comes natural to, and, like, leaning into stuff like this is so valuable. Yeah.
It's like I have a bunch of internet friends now from also Google Developer Experts community. I was like, I am super grateful about these people, because I mean, we never met. We would probably meet at some point, but because of the COVID, we never met. But I feel like, I mean, we can relate to each other, and we can somehow get along, and we support each other. I mean, you supported my podcast, and you were like to be honest, I sent the chain mail to all of the GDs, I am having a podcast, can anyone actually be my guest? And you were the first one to respond, and I was like so happy.
It's hard to find. It's hard to find that. It's and what's great about that is, we spend a long time in our lives just making sure we're good at everything. You've got to take your things that you're bad at, you got to make it a little bit better and stuff like that. But at some point, we just focus on the things we're good at. And that's where we really kind of pull ahead from the pack in different ways. And I think that it's fantastic because, like, what I think about this is like, we reach out. It's hard to get people to interact. It's hard to get the cool conversations, but you are building a network and a community of people across the world during a pandemic. That's super valuable. And a lot of people watching this really probably appreciate that this is happening. Because what are you going to do? Go to a coffee shop? Or, pandemic's a hard time for a lot of people.
Yeah, I guess. Also Lawrence was like the first person in my podcast that I was like, I mean, I have learned everything from you, and now you are going to be my guest.
He's such a cool dude, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's super awesome.
You're also an incredible person, in my opinion. You have awesome projects.
Thank you.
I really admire these kind of people who can take time to make cool projects with AI in their free time. Can you maybe like talk about the coolest project in your opinion that you have ever done and how you came up with it?
Okay, do have a lot of fun projects.
That's a hard question for you.
That is definitely a hard question. I would say that probably my favorite to date is called Enjoying the .show. Enjoying the .show came to me from the pandemic. So one of the things that used to happen is I would go speak at a conference. And when you're sitting there, you're speaking at a conference, you would look into the audience. I would say something. I'd look into the audience and I would see people's heads nod and I'd see smiles and I'd see interactions. Or maybe I'd start like saying a long sentence and I'd look out and I'd see people checking their email. I was like, time to switch. You could kind of like feel an audience. Then all the conferences moved to virtual. And now, like what I love about this is that I get to look at you, I get to talk to you, I get to sort of have this interaction. But when you're doing a virtual presentation, it's you and your slides. And there's hundreds of people watching or listening, or like it's a ridiculous number, but you can't tell how you're doing. You can't tell how they're feeling. So I created this project called Enjoying the .show, where you could create a room. And in that room, you can name it whatever you want. So we could call this the Inference Podcast Room. And what happens is they go to the audience side of that room. And what it does is it does facial, so first off, it's going to have the facial sentiment detection. And it's going to identify whether they're smiling, neutral, upset, disgusted, surprised, all those things. And it does that locally inside the browser, and it doesn't actually take your face and send it off anywhere. One, that's a ridiculous use of resources to send the entire face, and two, we can process that directly on their machine. So it just basically identifies whether they're happy or not in the sentiment, and then sends that off to a server. And then on the other side, on my side, I have a pie chart of like how my audience is doing. And
that's nice.
If everybody's smiling, I get a big old chart that says like everybody's smiling. If I say a joke, if I say nothing, then I could see all of them neutral. And we did this with hundreds of people in one of my talks. And I told everybody, I was like, all right, everybody, now like be afraid. And then you just watch the chart immediately turn to afraid. And you're like, all right, now everybody smile. And well, actually, it was funny is because I told everybody be afraid. We saw the chart turn color. And then you saw a bunch of people start laughing. So you start to go back to smiles and stuff like that. It's a really cool project. So what that's doing is tying in Amplify to get real-time GraphQL subscriptions and getting everybody's sentiment analysis directly from hundreds of different machines and then collating them down into one pie chart. So it's a way for me to see my audience. It was a lot of fun. It's free. And it's available, and you can try it right now. So if you went to Enjoying the .show, you could put yourself in the audience and the watch room and watch your own facial reactions going through a network.
What did you use for this?
So the face model, I was training my own. I was thinking about grabbing Google's sentiment analysis and some of the face models, but what it is it's just straight up the facial landmark detection. And it's a 128 point facial landmark detection. that's going on the client side. I didn't have to train another one. They had one from Face API JS that I wound up using. Works out. It was wonderful. So I didn't want to train my own because that one was fantastic. Then that part of it also has a sentiment model. And then so the landmarks are being sent to the sentiment model, and that's the identification. And then that is tied into a connection with Amplify with AWS services. And that's doing a real-time subscription through Amplify to get over to my machine. And then I have a victory chart and a React app, which immediately updates all the stuff. So that's machine learning, cloud, and front end all mixed together. I guess that's what makes it my favorite project.
Do you have any idea on, how does DevOps practices actually differ in ML? Is there any difference, to be honest?
I think there's a big difference in the fact that thinking of problems is really different depending on the experience of your audience. One of the most interesting things is that people who are only thinking in code, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they're thinking only in code. They think, oh, okay, when I need this feature, I'll start building this feature, and then the feature will work or not work. There's no statistical probability in any of this, and they're not thinking of collecting the data well before getting the feature. So
that's like the 90% of the problem solving, in my opinion.
Exactly. And they don't know it. So the person I was talking to was like, oh, we have this. At some point, we might want to identify that the package was delivered. And so I was like, okay. I was like, so you're taking photos now that of the package being delivered. And they're like, no, we don't have this feature yet. I was like, you take the photos now. So you can have the feature. And it's just like this mindset of not understanding the data-driven development, and also not understanding that it's statistical. Like they're like, and then when you turn this on, it will happen. Like, well, no, it's a little bit of an experiment here. Like we'll have an accuracy level based on what data we don't have, and then we'll have to improve it and stuff. And just totally did not understand that at all, because in this world of ones and zeros, there's no qubits, there's no like ambiguity for them. And so I think that this is where DevOps is going to have to evolve. A lot of people thinking in code, like, is the website deployed? Well, there's no maybes for them.
Yeah, I completely understand. And it must be hard to explain to people, if whatever application you are going to develop, it basically depends on whatever the data you have. Mm-hmm. Like I remember talking to when I was like freelancing 2 years ago, I don't know. And like there was this application and they were like, oh, we want to use machine learning and stuff. And I said, can I look at your data? Because that's how I'm going to see what the problem is and like how can I solve a problem. And they didn't even know what problem is. I mean, if you can't look at your data, you probably wouldn't know what your problem is. And they were like, no, we can show you the data. We cannot do it. I said, how am I supposed to do it then? Because that's another level. That's an extreme case. But most of the people think that, there is this algorithm, let's say XGBoost or like a neural network, like a trillion, bazillion parameters, and whatever the data we have, we are going to just push it and we will get like 99% accuracy.
Right.
I mean, that's mostly the expectation.
Yeah, there's a learning curve coming up. I think that's probably the thing that's holding back most of the consistency between application and products really taking on the idea of AI. Because one of the things I've noticed, a lot of the people I talk to don't even see it around them. Like they don't see it and they go, oh, this is going on. So I say like, yeah, Gmail is finishing my sentences for me, and I hit tab to complete it, right? And it says, here's what it is. And then it actually wants to know whether that was the real one or you want to like get another sentence. It's got that little thing at the end, and it's trying to like figure all this out. And the truth is, if you're not understanding federated learning, or you don't even see that as machine learning, or you don't see that as AI at all, then it's going to take a while for you to see it in a product or think of how it could help your company. A lot of the places that have sort of like snuck it in have done a great job. That the only things we hear are when there are like terrible failures. When Microsoft puts a bot out there and then Twitter turns it into a terrible thing, or when Google fails to apply a certain algorithm, without removing some of the bias. We hear about those things.
Happens.
But the truth is, if it's applied without that, people honestly, they're not noticing. They're not seeing it. Their devices in their house get an update and get a little bit smarter, and they're like, oh, okay, I guess that always worked like that. No, it didn't. Everybody's, all these things are learning around you. If you see it, you could start to like take part in it.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, if I'm talking to audience, if you have any questions, you can ask. And I want to also ask you, like, I got your book.
Oh,
Thanks to you. Hopefully you'll
it.
get the physical copy as well. As a person who is coming from a Python world, that's some sort of an, elvish for me, kind of.
Yeah.
When Frodo, I don't know if you watch Lord of Rings, but Frodo looks at the ring and say, it's some sort of elvish, I can't read it. That's me looking at JavaScript code, basically.
That's true.
But I will learn.
Speak, friend, and enter. That's all I say.
Yeah.
The Python to JavaScript conversion is getting smaller and smaller and easier and easier. Dare I say, both of them are getting a lot of influence and have been getting a lot of influence from the height of Ruby in the early 2010s, 2012s, times like that, where Ruby really focused on developer happiness, simplicity, a bunch of other things. And it took till, I want to say, like 2018 for JavaScript to finally add like dot includes for an array. It's been around for a long time, and they finally decided to write dot includes. So they're getting there. I'll agree with you. It's really nice for you to say that JavaScript is Elven language, but it's probably the one that's a little bit more Middle Earth.
Yeah, I guess.
JavaScript's got a lot of catching up to do.
When I was at the college, I learned C. And MATLAB and other languages that are not really developer friendly. So I really love Python. I also learned a bit of JavaScript we had an IT class, I learned JavaScript, SQL, etc. But like still this is like an elvish to me. But like what I want to ask is that does the development of an ML application, practices differ from JavaScript to Python? Like, is there any difference?
Yeah, there's a bit of a difference in what's going on there. Now, JavaScript benefits. So Python has benefited from the scientific community constantly adopting it, pushing it, making it go further, putting it on IoT, but just really the scientific community helping Python grow has been phenomenal and pushed Python above Java. So that way, Python's the second most popular programming language, but there's a monster out there that's just this huge winner in the most popular programming language for like definitely 7+ years, and that's JavaScript. And the trick is that JavaScript was just sort of like accepted to run everywhere, and it's like that C style. It's that algol syntax programming language, but it's like forming itself a little bit closer. Like it's been getting shaved back since about 2015. You've got like some of us use semicolons, some of us don't. You've got that argument, and it's getting cleaner and better. So with having this giant community and Fortune 500s pushing for JavaScript efficiency, you've got all these really cool things where Node is outperforming Python, and where GPUs are giving access directly to JavaScript, like through CUDA. And you've got all these cool things where JavaScript just always shows up. Invited or not, JavaScript shows up. So here's something I'll kind of say is that one of the big differences that you first notice is that JavaScript's late to the party. So something that exists in Python that's sort of like a foundation is always has a sort of younger version that someone started in JavaScript. So if you like pandas, you've got Tensorflow.js over in JavaScript. Same exact, almost everything, but take a subset of the language. Take a subset of all the stuff. Tensorflow.js is like this younger sibling of TensorFlow, and it has a younger version of a subset of the functions of TensorFlow. Okay, that's fine. It consistently is adding, functions to get parity with TensorFlow, but TensorFlow is always moving, so you'll start to see it like catch up and then sort of like creep up there. So you'll see the same things happening in both, but where you'll see the big difference is that platforms. You can do JavaScript just goes everywhere. So this is where you see a huge strength. Wherever you felt limited in Python, like, okay, I've got this in this one part. Maybe you have Flask running for your model on a server or something like that, or you're putting it through like a service. Well, let's say you wanted it on device and you wanted it, and when you go to on device, well, what are we talking about now for programming language, right? You maybe move it to TF Lite. Well, now you've got to figure out what you're going to write for that particular device. JavaScript just goes to those places too, invited or not. So IoT, Windows, mobile, React Native, React, websites. You've got it on all these different platforms. And so what I like about it is you can get it just as fast. You can get just some of the similarity, but it does feel a little different. So I guess you could have that jack of all trades feeling where it's like not really as good as the native language in any particular device. If you're going to go put it on a device, if you want to put it on a drone, maybe you should be coding in C. And if you want to go put it on Windows, maybe you should do C#. And if you want to do it on a server, you could do it on Python. Or you could do JavaScript in all three of those places and get a ridiculous efficiency. So that's probably what I would say is if you're platform independence and you're okay with sort of a knockoff version kind of coming in for each one because people are pushing for these things to go to these different platforms, you can get a lot of bandwidth out of JavaScript. And some places it outperforms Python. It outperforms what you would have put there anyway. And when that happens, it's kind of exciting because you can pick that up and put it in another place.
It's like I saw a meme where people were it was describing like at econometrics people trying to apply linear regression for everything. It's like that, machine learning, JavaScript, data science, JavaScript, IoT, JavaScript.
Pretty much. Buzz JavaScript. Yes. It didn't matter. That is true. And I dare say, it can be very tiring as a person who's learning different technologies to have to keep up with the latest, coolest thing in all these different technologies. Just take a look at like Apple and Android for a second. They both have ridiculous announcements and conferences explaining all kinds of new API. If you want to find somebody who's just able to stay up with the latest and greatest of latest iPhone and latest Android phone, that's somebody's full-time job just knowing the parity between those two. And it's really hard. And that's what makes, I think, this sort of mentality so attractive. It's because we only have so much time in a day, but, we still want to deliver things around the world to other people to
Yeah.
make that connection.
My opinion is that if I'm going to develop an application, if I knew JavaScript, I will probably use JavaScript, which I will probably learn.
Yeah.
But I mean, some things are just way too, I don't know, not there. It's like training neural network on R, meanwhile doing statistical analysis on Python.
Yeah.
I think languages are good at their own way. JavaScript is quite nice because like it's very versatile and nice. I mean it's better than Python in development. I mean, I wouldn't use Flask if I knew React. I'm actually developing with Flask right now, and
yeah.
So I don't know if you know Stefan. Stefan says as TypeScript makes the out more readable. He is the person who is delivering language models to Hugging Face, like the BERT and other language models. He literally contributed to NLP like in an exponential way.
Yeah,
Hi, Stefan.
Plus one on TypeScript, right?
There is another comment on TypeScript.
Yeah. Yeah, I think TypeScript will do well. Now, here's a funny thing about TypeScript is that Google is quasi grabbing onto it, but they have to kind of keep a little bit of their energy in Dart. Take a look at the Flutter community, who's trying to be sort of a competitor to the idea of React Native and sort of like breaking onto multiple platforms. You've got Dart, and I dare say, I think TypeScript is currently far superior. TypeScript was developed by Microsoft, and when Angular was coming up for another version and they were trying to figure out all this stuff, Microsoft said, hey, what is it you're trying to do here? Because we did this in TypeScript. Why don't you just use TypeScript? So now you see TypeScript in Angular. You see it in a lot of front-end frameworks. You see it in React. You see it in React Native. You see it all over the place. And I'm a huge fan of that because one of the most vicious problems with JavaScript is that the dynamic typing will absolutely bite you from a typo, and it becomes a runtime error. Where with TypeScript you sort of get this higher level protection of like being confident in what you're writing, knowing what you're interfacing with, having real interfaces that you can check and have your IDE or your editor check on for you. Yeah, TypeScript is essential. One of my projects that I did that I knew was going to be a popular project when I started, I said, first thing I have to do is this whole thing has to be in TypeScript, and it made it a lot more reasonable for me to code, for sure.
I'm definitely gonna learn. The other day there was this Flutter event announcing Flutter 2.0, and everyone was like, Flutter can do this and that, and I was like, I'm going to learn Flutter now.
I will say this for Google: they know how to get developer buy-in. They're way better than a lot of other companies for that. And the Flutter events are always really fun. I love the quality of a Flutter event and the stuff and the team. It's really awesome. I haven't bought into Dart, and I haven't done anything too much with Flutter yet, but it's on a list for sure. I wish they had gone with TypeScript, but hey, I'm sorry, Flutter people.
I remember the day when TensorFlow 2.0 came out, and I was so hyped about it, like all of the new stuff. I hated opening a session, like I hated eager execution stuff, and like that was awesome. And then 2.4 came out, and pre-processing layers and other new exciting things, and I feel like TensorFlow is very much a plug and play sort of framework when it comes to deep learning rather than PyTorch. I'm not that fluent with PyTorch. I don't have much experience. I have few, but that's also an opinion that TensorFlow is a plug and play thing. You just just stack some layers, pre-processing layers for whatever the domain you're working on, and then just put your neural network and you are done. It's like magic. It's not like we are Google developers experts.
Right.
Let me swag with my experts cup. This session is not sponsored by Google, by the way.
Well done. Yeah.
So what would you recommend to software developers who want to like start doing ML? Like how what they should do? There's a lot of hype among them and they really want to get in. So that's a valid question.
I like that they need to start seeing it. That's the biggest thing for me. Like, you've got really cool special effects and these things are happening, but I noticed a lot of time they're not seeing it. They're not thinking in machine learning, not thinking about data at all. And this is the thing I think that's holding them back. Because if you don't start seeing it around you, and the only thing you know is like this person does not exist.com, and you're like, oh, that's something machines can do, but you don't really like understand GANs, or you don't really kind of get in there and think about like what is making this work. Now, I'm not talking about going down to the math, and that's a big difference. One of the things I do in an interview is I don't actually force people to use a particular programming language, and I don't force them into a certain domain. I want them to explain the problems to me and solve the problems and wherever they're comfortable. And that shows me like what a person's actually capable of doing. And I think that is missing in the world of machine learning in a lot of ways. So I want them to first start to see it. And then the second thing I want them to do is find a passion, find a project, find a moment, because you can almost always endure the how when you've got a goal that's the what. And that's the thing. I want them to make it a priority. This kind of like circles back to the first thing we talked about. And if they say, I'm going to learn this, this is what I'm going to do. And whatever the passion was that got them to want to do that, that's it. So that might lead them to Python. That might lead them to JavaScript. That might lead them to going and taking Andrew Ng's, course and learning, brushing off their linear algebra books. I mean, I don't know where they're going to go, but they're going to go somewhere and they're going to learn a lot. And then that's going to help them get into all these other places. I think that if they do want something in JavaScript, I kind of think, I'm sorry about this. My book's probably one of the best things that they could do. I've had the book reviewed from people who are very familiar with, they work professionally in AI and machine learning, and by people who have never used it, but know JavaScript really well. And in both cases, there were different chapters that they liked, but they liked the overall story and they liked the whole book. So that helps out a bit. That tells me that I properly glued those together, as long as they want to go into JavaScript. If you don't want JavaScript, if you want to just like jump in and do the craziest, coolest thing, like, maybe PyTorch is the answer, maybe TensorFlow is the answer. It really just depends on like what you're going to next and what your goal is. So that's two things. It's the passion and seeing it. That's what I think is most important.
I agree. And there is also another thing. Some of the people actually want to learn ML because it's a hype in a way, because like it's everywhere and it's a hype, not because they are. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people mention the pay, and I'm like,
oh,
you want to go in there just for that? You have no other knowledge of it. And they're like, yeah, they get paid a lot. Oh, seriously? They're not going to make it. They're not going to make it.
I mean, I didn't have any other option than being a data scientist or an ML engineer, so I don't really know about the pay stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are making a decent amount of money, I guess. I don't know if we are making more than backend developers or like front-end developers or, I don't know, some developers. But I feel like it's not an area where you can basically want to go in for the hype or the pay, because you will get burnt out.
Out immediately if you
yes
if you aren't in it, if if you don't see it, you are a data scientist in name only. And it's just not going to work for very long.
And also people, what the mistakes people mostly do is that, like, in my opinion, 80% of the workflow is mostly dealing with the data itself, cleaning it, pre-processing it, and then people just directly go ahead and try to train with, like not doing exploratory data analysis or just pre-processing or looking at the imbalance, maybe do some oversampling. I feel like the common mistake is that they directly want to go and just pass their data to some, I don't know, some neural network, like training an MNIST, and that just doesn't work.
They want a golden goose, right? They just want they want to feed it, and they want gold to pop out the other side. And
I guess. And as you said, for the Gants, for instance, they don't know why they're getting a mode collapse. That's like a problem.
As a matter of fact, that was probably the hardest part of the book, was preparing data so that way people could go in and have a friendly experience. One of the things I had to do was, everybody does MNIST constantly, and I was like, I'm not going to do MNIST. I'll talk about it. I have to, but I'm not going to have them do MNIST. I was like, I've got to do something that's, like MNIST was amazing. 20 years ago, everybody was, woo, like, how fast could I get this? How great could I get it? It's like, I need to come up with something a little bit different. And so one of the things I did was the Harry Potter data set, where you do a drawing and score 2 into that. Yeah, ridiculous data set. Yes. And so I was like, it's basically it's MNIST, but a little bit more fun and exciting. So I found that has definitely raised a few more eyebrows than did I just draw an 8.
I was quite amazed by your computer vision presentations and the examples in the book, like the pumpkin one. And also the example you have given, oh Lord, they were just shredding a photo of a dog.
Yes.
And, that was amazing.
Yeah,
I was
max
like,
pooling.
I get it now.
Yeah, I never could. I'll be honest with you. Every time I learned about max pooling, I was like, this is ruining, data.
That's a bad thing. Why they're doing it?
Yeah, like I guess it works better with computers or something like that. And seeing an artist actually not even doing max pooling, because it would have came out better, because he would have created one dog out of the best pieces. But just showing you how shredding a thing across 2 axes and then putting it back together, it makes completely recognizable images. Yeah, it was really cool. It's a lot of fun. But who, fortunately enough, you've got to find someone out there who's willing to do that. And that was an artist, and he actually approved for me to go ahead and show that in any of my work. Super awesome stuff. But that's what that person does. All kinds of really creative things just like that. And I was like, this is beautiful. So if you don't ever see a video, maybe we can include it in the notes. If you watch that, max pooling feels just fine afterward.
I mean, I'm mostly working on NLP and stuff
I feel like
that. And also,
that's the next spot where we've got to find good explanations. Like we have embedded space for vectors and features and words being close to one another, and we create this like pseudo 3D cloud to explain some of these things, but I still feel like it's pretty hard, like scalar
just do a
vectors.
PCA, I would say, but that is way too cheesy.
I don't know, but maybe we'll have to come up with a few projects to kind of make those really concrete and make sense for people, especially people coming to it for the first time. Haven't received years and years and years of education on it. It is intimidating.
It's quite intimidating. And I have this friend, his name is Vincent, and he works in a chatbot framework called Raza, and he's like you in a parallel universe. He also does very cool projects, and he had this project called What Lies, where you can basically visualize any embedding you want. And also, if you
nice.
want to look at your embeddings, there is also a project called Tensorflow Embedding Projector, which gets all of your embeddings, and you can visualize it, or you can, write a word and get the closest words to it.
Nice.
It's a cool one, in my opinion, because like we have less explainability, I guess.
Yeah.
And a lot of bias.
and Lawrence does a great job. He has a whole NLP course on Coursera. He does a great job with sort of making you able to make peace with that part. I think you generate Shakespeare in his course.
Yes.
So, which is kind of fun because it's hard to read Shakespeare normal. So if the machine messes up, you can't tell.
Yeah, you wouldn't notice. I never thought about it, by the way.
Yeah. I tried making I fed all of our podcasts into a model once, and I tried to make it generate new podcast episodes. It was terrible. What kind of came out of it? It was so bad. But then I realized I just rebranded it as poetry, and then it was good.
Also, there are some parameters like temperature where you are doing natural language generation. It's a mess, to be honest. But I mean, we have like gigantic parrots now, so they are doing all that stuff. Like GPT-3, bazillion parameters. Just generate something that is incredibly racist,
Well, what I found is that what I've seen from GPT-3 is like we're really getting to a new place where the generation, the lookup, the information, that's all really good, but there just needs to be another part of the brain, the checks and balances, a sort of like a as we're sort of like building this assembly line, we're starting to resemble something that I'd consider one part of this sort of solved, and a new part of it has like opened up and sort of like governing what's happening, what's being said. And I could see a lot of cool stuff happening there. And it's not that far. I know a lot of people get upset when we talk about how this is a lot like our current brain, but it is. It really is. And I don't get why there's such a problem around like an artificial neuron being compared to an actual brain's neuron. So I think that analogy helps a lot of people out, because you learn, this is what happens, and this is how a brain's doing this, and this is how this neural network is doing something quite similar. And I get it. They're not the exact same thing, but it really does help. It's sort of like comparing electricity to the flow of water. They're not the same. You can never do the same, but you could actually like follow something, and kind of it helps explain a few things, and it helps you kind of get there. All analogies break down with enough of it, enough of a person like being critical about it. But I really do like analogies. So try to stop me.
Me too. It's like I feel like we need to like take it one step further.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my opinion on these gigantic parrots is that we have solved syntax and grammar, and we can just we can just talk. This can just talk like a person, like an average person, because we have already solved these problems. But like what we need is somehow some common sense and other stuff. So after that we will get to it. But like for now, that's all we have. There's no need for the overestimation. Robots are taking our jobs. Robots can write code, and my software developer friends were like, oh my God, is it going to take my job? And I was like, no, we are not there yet. Just calm down.
Everybody thinks that it's general intelligence all the time. And I think that's what we were talking about earlier, right? We were talking about educating developers to see what is the difference between narrow and general intelligence. What are the parameters coming in here? What what is the creativity of the combination of these things, and how we should celebrate the fact that it is proper grammar that's coming out, not so much that it is correctness.
Or like
That's coming out.
meaning, it means, it doesn't mean something mostly. I mean, you ask for a meaning of life and it just spills some gibberish and you're like, oh my God, this is so wise. But it's probably taking out of a book, because like the data also includes the book. You could have just read the book.
A whole bunch of other books. Yeah, it's changing it and then citing things that actually were said in history in a context where it could fit, it creates feasibility. We've attained feasibility in alternate universes. That's not how it really is. It's not actually answering things, but the feasibility of what it's saying could have been something for someone. It's great for creatives, people who are looking for things outside of this actual natural law and order. It's fantastic for them. I mean, the people who are writing stories who've been recreating the same stories from the 90s could totally use this to come up with something a lot more new than another Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah, just, take something and edit it and just post it and you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to take more of your time. You have like a meeting. I really enjoyed to talk.
I want to come back. If you have to be your first repeat guest at some point, because there's so much more. Like it really is amazing to talk about this at this level. And truth be told, I don't think enough people are having conversations like we're having right now. What does it feel like with this onslaught of information? Where's the good stuff? Where do we celebrate? Where are we excited? And I'll tell you this, if you're just seeing everybody's absolute best thing all the time, you're like, oh, geez, I don't have enough time in my life to get good at all these things. But it's nice to hear, like, you haven't done that much PyTorch. I haven't done that much PyTorch. I need to do way more PyTorch and check this stuff out. I need to do a lot more on-device stuff. I need to do more NLP, like explaining that kind of problem.
It's the technical debt.
Yes, we're all drowning in technical debt together, but at least we're together, right?
Yeah, and the imposter syndrome kicks in, and it's just.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed talking to you. We should definitely do this again sometime, and also physical, hopefully.
Yes, whenever the world. Actually, I have my first shot, so.
Oh, congrats!
Yeah, this has been it's been like quite a ride, and from traveling and seeing people and interacting. Having a year of not being able to see anything and making things like enjoying the show so that I can actually have human interaction. I miss the world. I hope outside opens back up so that I can see everybody again. I hope to see you at a conference and honestly, thank you for doing things like this, which are connecting people during a time where everybody's kind of stuck. So it's really nice to have someone to talk to about this stuff and seeing shows. I really enjoyed the one with Lawrence, and I'm going to continue to watch.
Yay, thank you so much. I will definitely host you again, but for now, I don't want you to be late to your meeting. So let's see ya.
All right. Hey, buy my book, everybody.
By learning Tensorflow.js.
That's right.
See ya.
Bye.